So have you ever thought about what you can't live without? If you think about it, in just 3 minutes, you'd be dead without oxygen. In 3 days, without water, you would die. In just 3 weeks, without proper nourishment, you wouldn't be on this planet. We're much more fragile than we really think we are. Now, I travel around the world, and when I do, I typically take a bag like this with me. And if you're like most Americans, there are just certain things that you think you can't live without. And so when I travel around the world, there are certain things I can't find anywhere else. And so I kind of sneak them into my bag and make them a part of what I call my necessities for travel. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that I take with me. I don't know if you're like me, but these babies are golden. This right here is a Starbucks Via. And if I don't know about you, but if I don't have myself some coffee, my day doesn't usually start right. And one of these little babies gives me a great kickstart to my day. And this has been kind of one of those things that I think is a necessity, something that I can't live without. So I put it in my backpack. Another thing that I find that I need to take with me, and hopefully you all done this, is a little, kind of a little bit of a gadget. I'm a kind of a gadget guy. I really love this little gadget. You've probably seen one of these. But this is the coolest little thing. It's a toothbrush. And inside that little dude is a little toothpaste. And if you are like me and have to have your coffee and you end up with coffee breath and you go to a lot of business meetings, this little dude right here kind of becomes a necessity. So I put that in my bag as well. So we'll see what else we have in here. I don't know why this is in here. This is actually something I think I could take out. It's been a while. Some things are just sentimental, You can always hope for a better future. One of the things that my mom always told me to bring are undies. And as you can tell, I have matching undies. My tops match my bottoms, but these are very special undies. You can actually wash these on the road, believe it or not. So I always pack undies like my mom told me to. And one of the other things that I like to take, some refer to these as cowboy Kleenex, but this is really a roll of toilet tissue. And if you've ever traveled in the developing world, this is a lifesaver. And so there are certain things, certain necessities that I keep in my little brown bag, if you will. And life can get really rough without some soft tissue, if you know what I mean. But you know what's interesting is one of the things that I really like to put in this bag, and it's going to be kind of what I talk about today, and I see these sitting around and they're at the tables. I'd really like to take this with me. I really would. I'd like to take this with me. In fact, I gave this speech in Raleigh, North Carolina one time, and I had this type of bottle in my bag, and I got to the airport with all my stuff, and I got to TSA, and guess what they made me take out? They didn't make me take out anything but this. And this little bottle of water is what I have found is the one thing that my friends all around the world need most. But it's the very thing I can't take with me. This little bottle of water is something that everybody in the world needs. In just 3 days, you'll be dead without this. It doesn't take long without this little bitty thing we call water to make a big difference in our livelihood. And what I have found is that 5,000 children die a day. 5,000 children a day. I didn't say a year. I didn't say a month. I didn't say a week. I said every day. To put that another way, that's 200 children under the age of 5 every hour. Within the next hour, as we said here, 200 children will die. This visual gives you an idea exactly what that looks like. 5,000 children every day. Now, what you will notice in the background are buses. If each of those buses had 50 children on them, And there are exactly 100 school buses in this illustration. Every day, 100 of those school buses are going over a cliff around the world, little children. That's not everybody that's dying from a lack of access to clean water. We're talking about 2 million children a day. 1 in 5 children. I have 6 children. I have 5 grandchildren. What that means is out of those, at least 2 of them would not be here, given the statistic. So what we have are 100 school buses that are going over the cliff every day. Now, I promise you, if we had one school bus in Kansas City or Oklahoma City or Los Angeles or New York, if we had one school bus go over a cliff, we would try to figure out why is it going on. And then if it kept happening with one school bus every day and we had 50 school buses in a year go over a cliff, we'd have that problem solved. But what we have here is a problem that's huge. A huge problem that we need a simple solution to. So let me kind of take you into the world. I want you to meet some of my friends. I want you to meet a lady named Petronella, and later I want you to meet a man named Jimmy. But this is the reality for a lot of the developing world.
Diarrheal disease is a lot more of a problem than many people think, certainly in the West. People have been spoiled by the experience that we think of diarrheal disease as perhaps something that happens on a holiday, or we eat in a strange place and we get an upset stomach for a couple of days and take medications if necessary, and it's resolved. That doesn't reflect the reality of killing something like 2 million children every year.
The idea that simple disease kills people, stunts people, erodes their learning, erodes their educational outcomes is very difficult to relate to. Well, first of all, it's not a single event. You lose your ability to absorb nutrients. You lose part of your growth potential. You're set back a little bit for life, but that doesn't stop once. That happens again and again and again. And gradually, a child with repeated diarrhea will slip away from the development curve.
When it comes to young children, I mean, the basic challenge is just survival. We're sheltered from this. We don't remember times when 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 children in family would die from a waterborne disease.
It's very painful for a parent, to see their child who is under 5 years old is in such a pain and, just die because there's no safe drinking water.
Can you imagine any greater challenge than losing a child? Unfortunately, that's just a reality of life, and to us, what are staggering numbers, to them are just a fact of life.
Mweo wandi pamona olupo lwandi okutwafu wako okuli bakasukulu n'abakashiwa abalanda nkasansamuka nkaba n'ensansa eshingi.
Did you happen to catch what Petronella said? She said, I hope and dream of a future for my children. Petronella is a lady who lives in Zambia, and she represents the bottom billion of the people in the world who don't have access to clean water. You see, she represents a women's and children's issue that is literally killing the world. She will walk as much as 1 mile to 2 miles early in the morning, one way, to get a 40-pound bucket of water, and do the same thing in the evening and go to a nasty water hole in hopes that that nasty water will sustain her family. And in reality, it could be the very thing that kills them. Not too long ago, I was in Malawi, Africa, and I woke up early one morning, and this is the image that I saw. There was a little boy sitting on the water's edge, looking at the sun as it was rising over Lake Malawi. And if you're not careful, you can overlook what's to his left and his right, and you may think that that's what he would consider his drive-through at McDonald's for the morning. But really what's happening is this little boy, if you look to the picture to the right, is washing his dishes. Every morning, day in and day out, it's this little boy's routine to go to Lake Malawi and wash his dishes. Now, I often will show this photo to my children and remind them it's not asking too much to load the dishwasher. But this is his reality. He's washing his dishes. And not only is he washing his dishes, He's bathing in Lake Malawi, and he is also fetching water from Lake Malawi. What you don't see is not too far from this little boy, not too far from where he's at, is another family that's walking down the shoreline of Lake Malawi, and a mom and a dad with their children, all in tow like ducks in a row. And exactly what I just said is behind them. Ducks and goats and cows and chickens, all following the family down the shoreline of Lake Malawi. And guess what they're doing? They're washing their dishes. They're fetching their water. They're bathing. But not only they, but their cows, their chickens, their ducks, and their goats. And not only that, they're defecating in this very same water that this little boy is washing his dishes. Now, I don't know about you, but when I saw that, it impacted my life. I actually was there because my faith had taken me to Lake Malawi, and I wanted to share my faith. And in the process of sharing my faith, I came across this real need. And I began realizing that Jesus not only cares about the spiritual, but he cares about the physical. And that if I was going to live out Matthew 28 in my life, I needed to also consider the role that Matthew 25 played in my life. And this little boy made a huge difference, a big difference in my life. I began to realize that I have to do something about it. And so what we did is we came back to America, and Water 4 began to develop what we call the Access 1.2. And this is the Access 1.2 that I'm holding in my hand. And we thought that we could find a simple solution that might impact the world and put the solution in the hands of the people. We realized that if we were going to solve the problem, it wouldn't happen on us going over on short-term mission trips. It wouldn't happen going on spring break. It wouldn't happen when we go, over Christmas break or for maybe a little extended time over the summer. That what we needed to do is we needed to partner with those families and those men in those countries and quit robbing them of their dignity, and maybe take the idea that we be given, to whom much is given, much is required, and transfer what we knew to them so that they could begin solving their own problems, and that they didn't need us to solve it. They just needed a friend. Because what I have learned is that the world is shrinking, and that Jesus challenged us to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And because the world is shrinking, these were my neighbors, and I couldn't just go home and not think about this little boy in Lake Malawi. And so what we did is we began to explore and look at ways that we could develop a hand pump that could be manufactured and resourced anywhere in the world. And believe it or not, we found our inspiration among Leonardo da Vinci. If you ever wonder if your life matters, can you imagine being Leonardo da Vinci and thinking that you'd help invent a hand pump that might help eradicate the world water crisis? Something tells me he never knew the contribution that he made, and that's why I'm big on everyone realizing that they have a purpose and they can make a difference in the kingdom. But Leonardo da Vinci was the inspiration for this Access 1.2 hand pump. And what we did is that we adapted his drawings and we applied it to modern technology. And then we began testing and seeing if this pump would hold up, and it holds up very well. It lasts a lot of the pumps that are out there. We've had it at over 5 million strokes. And these parts are basic PVC that can be resourced and found anywhere in Africa. And how it works, that's at the bottom is a little check valve that you can resource anywhere. The pump goes down into the aquifer. This check valve opens up, and this chamber is filled. Now the water invades this space, and once the water is in this space, and if you begin to push down with this plunger, this check valve door is closed. And then we introduce a second check valve. This check valve, as you push down, opens. And this is a demonstration model, they're not clear. And then inside that check valve is another piece of pipe which comes out the top. And when you push down, you can hear it. Can you hear that? That's the check valve on the bottom, but that would also be water. And so as you push this down, the water down comes up this pipe and is forced out the top. And we designed it in such a way that even a small child could push down and produce water. The thing that makes this pump unique is that this pump is putting water under pressure. And the thing that's great about having water under pressure is now you have water that you can move. You can move water from the ground up into a tank. You can put water into a tank, then you can now have drip irrigation. And if you can put water in a tank, you can also begin to do small-scale utilities. And now Africa begins to be where Oklahoma was 100 years ago out on the plains. And we moved from hand pumps, and now we have small-scale utilities. utilities. And that's part of what we're doing at Water 4 through that enterprise. And there's just jobs that are created all throughout that entire process. So we have a manufacturing facility in Ghana. We have small-scale operations throughout other countries whereby we're doing that. In addition to the hand pump, what we've developed is there are hand tools. One of the things that people say when they come and see our manufacturing facility in Oklahoma City, they are amazed at what we do, and they say this is so simple, but it's so labor intensive. And what we remind them of is that we as Americans and from the West, a lot of times what we will do is we watch our watches, but the developing world has time. And I guarantee you, I can ask any daddy, I can ask any mama in this room, if I told you that there was water 30, 40, 50, 60 feet below you, and you wouldn't have to walk 2 or 3 miles to get water and fetch water, would you be willing to spend 3, 4, maybe a week turning an auger to get to the water to put in the hand pump so you could have water at your hands? There's no question that I do that. And so what we tease about a lot of times is that we say Americans have watches, but Africans have time. And they're willing to put in the effort. They're very industrious, they're very hardworking, and they're willing to do it. They just don't need us to get in the way. And all we're doing is, to whom much is given, much is required. And all we're doing is transferring knowledge. We're transferring knowledge into the how-to of how to do this and helping give them an opportunity. So let me show you an example of what we mean, and you'll see what I'm about to show you. You'll see the hand pump, and you'll see some of the tools that we use. And this is an example of one of our businesses that we have in Africa.
If we're going to get water to the 1.2 billion people that need it, we're going to need to do it hundreds of wells at a time, not one well at a time. And the only way I know how to do hundreds of wells at a time is to put the solution at the level of the village, and that by teaching a group to drill water wells instead of giving them a water well, gives them a job, gives them purpose, it gives them motivation, and it gives entire regions clean water, all in the same package. We don't do charity at Water 4, we do opportunity.
My name's Jimmy Kamfwa. I work with the Sanford Water and Sanitation. Yeah, we do drill bores, we store plastic pumps. It's good money, although what we're doing is a hard job. This job it needs more power and more energy. We give our all heart to work this. No need of people who are lazy. They can't manage. Maybe they can even run away. I'm just proud just because I'm getting money for what I'm doing. I'm also proud for giving people clean water because I'm giving also life to him. When we see someone who's suffering, we should also suffer and find the solution.
I've got the best job in the world. And I can tell you that when days get long and I wonder sometimes why I'm doing what I'm doing, I just play that little segment and listen to those kids. Man, it drives me. But you know what else drives me? Is the look in Jimmy's eye. He's got dignity. He's got pride. He knows that he can make a difference. Can you imagine what it must feel like to be Jimmy and have people from the West pull up into your village and say, hey, Jimmy, get out of the way, man. We got this. Let us show you how to do this. And pat him on the head and play with his kids for a little bit and let the dust kick up and drive down the road. And his kids look at him and go, well, Dad, Why have we been living such a rough life all this time? Why didn't you do something about this? As opposed to Jimmy and his guys with their bikes and their pipe. And it's not easy and it's hard and they toil all day long and they're out there busting their knuckles and they're making it happen. And then they get to be around that well. And the people in that village, they see that water come out of the ground for the first time. And they've participated. They've helped pay for that well, and they've got ownership in that well, and they're going to pay for that water because that's the only way to sustain it. And they realize we're not going to have to pay $180 a year on the average to just stay healthy and take our kids to the doctor. We're going to take that $180 and we're going to maintain and sustain our well. And you know what? We're going to high-five Jimmy. We're going to pay him for coming out, and we're going to thank him for what he did. And he's going to saddle up on his bicycle or his little truck or his donkey or whatever it takes, wherever he's at in the world, and he's going to go on down the road. And he's going to pull into another village, and there won't be a white guy in sight, and he'll set up his tripod, and he'll set up his tools, and he'll put another hole in the ground. And he'll hear those same children laugh again and again and again. I want a fraction of that action. And you see, what's driving that is an opportunity. It's not charity. He doesn't need charity. He needs an opportunity. He needs an opportunity to make it happen. And really, the truth of the matter is at Waterford, we really kind of base our business. We're a bunch of business guys who have a ministry heart, who want to change the world, and we believe that business can do that. And we really have a business principle that's pretty simple. And that's the first thing. Is it simple? Is it scalable? And is it sustainable? You see, because what we have found when dealing in the developing world, they don't need a bunch of complex engineering. They don't need the latest and greatest. What one African leader told me is that we need to get to the year 1850. If we can get to the year 1850, we can handle it. Just help us get to the year 1850. And you know, as an Oklahoma boy growing up on the plains, I get that. I come from an agricultural family. I go out to our family farm, and there are still hand pumps on the family farm where my relatives and my grandparents got water out of the ground. Guess what? That was just over 100 years ago. If you walk into the Capitol, the House chamber at our state capitol, and you walk into the House chamber, on the right side of the wall is a huge mural. And on that mural is a grass thatch roof and a dirt sod brick hut. And out front is a lady with a black kettle. And in the background is a man with goats and cows. And the woman is feeding chickens, and she's making dinner for the day. And along the side of that building is a gutter that runs down into a rain catchment. When I often describe that image to people around the world, I ask them where that's at, and they tell me, oh, that's got to be Africa. Or that's got to be some other developing country. And I said, no, that was my grandparents in my state 100 years ago. And you see what happened in Oklahoma was we had a land run in 1889, and I often tease, I graduated from the University of Oklahoma. We're known as the Sooners. And Sooners were those in the land run who, in business, we call it first movers advantage. They didn't snooze or they didn't sleep in. They got up early, and they took out ahead of everybody else, and they went out and staked the land because someone gave them an opportunity. They said, if you'll go stake the land and then develop this land, you can turn it into commerce and it'll be your livelihood. Now, I love to joke, the other state school, their mascot is the cowpokes. And that's why I say we're the Sooners. We take first movers advantage, and if you're a cowpoke, you're pokey, and you snooze, you lose. So that's just an inside joke in Oklahoma. But the bottom line is it simple? Is it scalable? And is it sustainable? Is it simple in that anyone can do it when we transfer the knowledge? And what we've shown you, the tools we've demonstrated are so simple. Is it scalable? How does it scale up? Can it be duplicated? Can we take that knowledge and duplicate it in Jimmy? And can we duplicate it in BTEC? And can we duplicate it in Nestor? And these are guys that have businesses that I'm talking to about and over. And here's the great thing. Is it scalable? It's not dependent upon a white guy training them. We now have Africans in Africa training Africans on how to do it, and it's perpetuating, and it's exponential. So it is scalable. But it's not only scalable at the little grassroots level. We've opened a full-scale manufacturing facility in Ghana where we're manufacturing the pumps, we're manufacturing our tools, and we're creating jobs that then put drill teams to work. And then is it sustainable? If it's dependent upon me to continue, it's not sustainable. But when it's sustainable, it's when they can take it. One of the things that we're doing is we're challenging churches and we're challenging NGOs and we're challenging others. When we partner with someone, we ask them, one of the first things we'll ask them is, what is your exit strategy? What is your exit strategy in this region? Because if you don't have an exit strategy, you have become a part of the problem because you're hanging around too long. Because what we want to do is we want to transfer the knowledge, we want to raise up, we want to train and empower, and then we want to hand off to those that are local and let them run with it. Because we believe enterprise is the key to sustainability. We like to say that we don't consume wealth, we create wealth. We don't consume wealth, we create it. If you were to invest in one of our drill teams and you were to give them the seed capital that they need to start their business, typically that business will begin to produce income on its own within a year to year and a half. They will produce income, so what we invested them gets multiplied over and over. They may make $20,000 to $30,000 or $40,000 a year as a drill team with a pump and a system that only costs $2,000. So that tells you that they're doing anywhere from 20 to 30 to 40 wells, depending on where they're at and how fast they learn. They begin to generate income for themselves. They generate income for their teams. They generate income for the guys that are manufacturing the tools. And here's what's really cool. My wife and I, we have a business that one of our drill teams has been started in Kenya, out in the Kisumu area. Because those guys are putting in water wells, those guys now are getting water to widows who need water for what? For their chickens. And if those ladies can now deliver eggs, and those eggs then become a part of the local economy, then that helps the people who want to raise vegetables and seeds and everything else. And it's just exponential, because we really do believe that water does change everything. So we don't just consume wealth, we create it. Oftentimes I'm asked what makes Water Forward different. And I'll be interviewed, or people will be talking to me, and they say, there's a lot of water organizations out there. And I'm like, isn't that awesome? Because water changes everything. But the thing that makes Water Forward different, and I'm not here to bash anybody, I applaud anybody who's helping eliminate those 5,000 deaths every day. But since you ask, what is it that makes Water Forward different? It is the fact that we innovate. We are a product innovator. This is a product that was innovated to try to solve a problem in a very simple way. We are constantly perfecting the drilling tools and the methodologies. There's things that we're doing that don't rely upon augers that we're going to be releasing and bringing out within the year. We're developing toilets and things like that our guys that are in the water sector can go out and help solve the sanitation problem. The water problem is a 1 billion person problem. The sanitation problem is a 2 billion problem. So Water Forward is a product innovator that's trying to find products that innovate and change the way life is lived at the very remote area. I'm not against big mechanized trucks. Big mechanized trucks can do great things. They can't just get off into the bush where we are. They go deep in the ground, we go deep into the bush. We're like gorillas. We're like Navy SEALs. I mean, we're like snipers. I mean, we're weaving in and outside of bamboo. Our guys are carrying stuff into the deepest parts of the bush. One of our guys is a guy named Justin Wren. He's a UFC fighter. He has now done 30 wells. He's trained up a team, Shalom Drillers. They're their own business among the pygmies. And because we're getting water to the pygmies, they no longer have to go fetch water for other people that suppress them. And now the pygmies are free from that. And now they have been set free. And now they have their own land and they have their own villages. And you would never get a mechanized truck that far back into the bush. And he's written a book called Fight for the Forgotten. You can check it out, Fight for the Forgotten. And he's a part of the Water Forward team. You can actually watch him. He still fights. He's a cage fighter. He's a mixed martial artist cage fighter who fights for the forgotten all around the world. And he's joined Water Forward, and we're for fighting for the forgotten. So we implement. We teach and we implement, folks. And then we invest. We invest in the people. We raise capital. We raise seed capital. And we invest in people to help them start water enterprises that impact local communities. The bottom line is that we believe that water is the economic fuel that changes everything. When you get water into a very remote village, it changes everything. Water is the economic fuel that changes and sustains everything. Is it any wonder that Jesus referred to himself as the living water. Thank you.